The story opens in East Texas, 1989. A woman named Anna wakes up to strange sounds echoing through her home. Her husband, Richard, hears it too and tells her to stay put as he grabs a revolver from the closet. He quietly checks on their son, Jordan, who seems to be sleeping soundly. Then Richard heads to the living room, where he spots a flashlight beam moving across the walls. Startled, he panics and accidentally fires the gun. When Anna turns on the lights, the couple is horrified to see that Richard has fatally shot the intruder, straight through the eyes. Shaken, they quickly call the police. Chief Ray, the town's police officer, shows up and tries to comfort them. He identifies the dead man as Freddie Russell and asks Richard to come to the station to make a statement. At the station, Ray reassures Richard that he won't face any charges. It was self-defense. But Richard admits that Freddie didn't have a weapon, and he's struggling with guilt. Ray insists that Richard couldn't have known that in the moment. He also mentions that Freddie had a long rap sheet, so from a law enforcement angle, this was a win. The next morning, both Richard and Anna are still rattled. Word spreads quickly, and the townspeople begin to gossip. While Richard's at work, Anna, who's a teacher, calls him saying that everyone at the school is talking about the shooting. Richard heads to a local diner, only to find people staring at him like he's dangerous. Frustrated, he starts drinking, even though it's still early. Ray shows up, notices Richard's sour mood, and offers a bit of comfort. He tells him Freddie's burial is happening the next day, and even shares the cemetery address. Then Ray drops another bomb. Freddie's father, Ben Russell, just got out on parole after 20 years. The next day, Richard visits the cemetery and sees a few people lowering Freddie's body into the ground. That's when an older man approaches and introduces himself as Ben, Freddie's dad. Richard apologizes for what happened, claiming he had no choice, but Ben coldly says that doesn't change what he did. Ben also points out that Richard's son looks just like him. He saw their family photo in the paper. Spooked, Richard rushes away using a payphone to tell Anna to meet him at the police station. Then he races to Jordan's school and is relieved to find him safe. But from across the street, he spots Ben watching them with a chilling smile. Back at the station, Richard begs Ray to arrest Ben, but Ray says his hands are tied. Ben hasn't broken any laws or made direct threats. The best he can do is send patrols to check in on them occasionally. Later, Anna scolds Richard for attending the funeral. He suggests she and Jordan go stay with her mom, but she refuses, worried it might put her mother at risk. She offers up his father's cabin as a safe haven, but Richard says it's too remote and the last place he'd want to be. When they return home, Richard finds the door lock broken. Alarmed, he tells Anna and Jordan to leave immediately and go to her friend's place. After they're gone, he enters the house and suspects Ben has been inside, even in Jordan's room. He finds bullets scattered on the floor and a teddy bear with one eye ripped out. He calls the police, and this time, they take his warning seriously. Ray orders 24/7 protection. He assures the family that officers will be stationed inside and out, ready to strike if Ben returns. That night, as a storm rages outside, Richard gets up for some milk. A car suddenly pulls up, prompting the cops outside to get ready for action. But it turns out to be a neighbor looking for his missing dog. Richard returns to bed, but lightning flashes, revealing Ben silently standing in Jordan's room. Later, Richard wakes to find water dripping from the ceiling. He discovers the attic hatch is open and a police officer is lying unconscious. Jordan's bedroom door is locked, but Richard breaks it down, only to find Ben has escaped out the window without harming the boy. The police are baffled. Ray theorizes that Ben must have been hiding in the house ever since the first break-in. The next morning, while Richard is tidying up, he gets a call from Ray. Good news. Ben was caught trying to cross into Mexico. Elated, Richard heads to the station to sign the paperwork. There he notices a wanted poster for Freddie and realizes that it's not the man he killed. When he tells Ray, the chief claims his memory is likely fuzzy from the trauma. Richard tries to shake it off but still feels uneasy. At home, he calls Ray to insist that he didn't shoot Freddie. Ray tells him to drop it and hangs up. Determined, Richard drives back to the station to confront Ray, but he sees something disturbing. Ray and his officers putting Ben into a car. Curious, Richard tails them to a nearby train station. Hiding nearby, he watches in horror as the cops inject Ben with something, splash him with alcohol, and leave him unconscious on the train tracks. Richard hears an oncoming train, At the last second, he rushes in and pulls Ben to safety. Richard takes Ben to his remote family cabin and chains him up. Ben is shocked to see him, but Richard says nothing and walks out. The next day, he brings food and tries to explain. He never killed Freddy. He believes the police used his family to draw Ben out, and he wants answers. Ben, however, doesn't know anything about that, and he still doesn't believe Richard didn't kill his son. That night, Richard drives him to Freddy's grave. They dig up the coffin, and when they open it, Ben instantly realizes the body isn't Freddy. The corpse's fingers have been cut off, making ID harder. They realize Freddy's not dead. This was all staged by the cops. The two aren't sure what to do next. Ben asks Richard for money and contacts an old friend for help. The next day, Richard is at work when Ray arrives. He claims he couldn't recognize Freddy in the mugshot because his hair was dyed. Richard pretends to believe him. Shortly after, a man named Jim Bob shows up and introduces himself as a private investigator, Ben's friend from the night before. Richard takes him to the cabin where Ben tells Jim everything. He wants to see his son. Jim agrees to help. After some digging, he finds out Freddy got involved with the Dixie Mafia at a young age and eventually flipped. He was placed in witness protection by the FBI. To keep him safe, they faked his death. Jim believes Freddy is living in Houston under a new identity. Ben wants to go, and Richard insists on coming too. He needs to know who he shot. They travel to Jim's ranch in Houston. There, Jim learns of a man named Frank Miller who matches Freddy's profile. He just moved to the area and bought a house. Jim wants Ben to call him first, but Ben insists on meeting face-to-face. The next day, as they drive to the address, their car crashes into another vehicle. A muscular man gets out and attacks Jim, but Ben and Jim fight him off. Turns out he's Frank's roommate. They peek into the house, but no one's home. Inside the attacker's car, they find a stash of VHS tapes and take them. Back at Jim's ranch, Ben debates whether to call Freddy. Meanwhile, Jim and Richard play the tapes and are sickened to discover their illegal adult videos involving a minor. Even worse, Freddy and his roommate appear in the footage, beating the girl to death. Ben finally calls the number but panics and hangs up. When he walks in, he asks what was on the tape, but the others can't bring themselves to say. Eventually, they show him. Ben flies into a rage, trashes the place, grabs his gun, and storms out, intent on killing his son. Jim and Richard calm him down. That night, as Ben sits outside alone, Richard suggests turning the tapes over to the authorities, but Jim says it's pointless. The victims are undocumented girls. No one will care. Freddy's too valuable to the feds because of his mafia ties. Richard asks how long Jim and Ben have known each other. Jim replies, they served in Korea and Ben once saved his life. The next morning, gunshots ring out, but it's just Ben practicing. He tells them when a dog bites, you either leash it or put it down, and he can't leash his son. That night, they stake out Freddy's house. When Freddy steps out, Ben is overcome with emotion. He hasn't seen him in 20 years. They follow him to his video store, where he hides his snuff films among regular ones. Richard goes inside pretending to shop and finds out the store closes at 11. They plan their attack. Later, just as they're about to leave, they see Freddy bringing in a new girl. Ben is furious, but they hold him back. Freddy and his gang leave for their filming location, a remote mansion. The trio follows them, arms up, and sneaks in. They take out a guard and split up. Richard is attacked by a man with a tray, but shoots him in the head. Another gang member opens fire, but Ben saves Richard by killing him. A shootout breaks out. One by one, they eliminate the gang. They hear screams upstairs and rush in. They find a girl chained to a bed and cover her. Ben discovers Freddy hiding in a corner and aims his gun, but hesitates. Freddy uses the moment to wound Jim and shoot Ben, but Ben rallies, fires back. "I'm your father," he says. Freddy, stunned, asks if it's true, but Ben doesn't answer. He just fires one final shot. Ben dies from his injuries. Jim and Richard rescue the girl, torch the mansion, and flee. The next morning, Richard returns home. He quietly joins his sleeping family in bed, and the movie ends. That was Cold in July. A quiet town, one gunshot, and a spiral into darkness. If you enjoyed this twisted ride of secrets and revenge, hit that like button, drop a comment, and don't forget to subscribe for more movie recaps. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.